Hello, good evening, and welcome to the TNT show. We have yet another great guest. I know what you're thinking. You always have great guests, and we do. You're right. And I'm really excited that she's been able to join us this evening. Stay tuned to hear about India, organic farming, and being an MEP. But first, a few words about TNT. TNT stands for The Nation Talks. So in many respects, this is your show. To our guest tonight, The Nation talks to Heather Anderson. How are you, Heather? How are you coping with the pandemic?
Oh, wow. The pandemic. Well, I'm an organic farmer with a farm shop and a cafe and an art gallery here. I mean, I don't run all these things, but they're here on the farm. And when the lockdown started, everything closed. And then we went into an incredibly busy and distressing 2 months of changing the business completely to just do home deliveries. So like lots and lots of small businesses, we just had to hit the ground running, get our website working, deal with people who were frightened and distressed and really worried about getting food. You know, we had the toilet roll, emergency. We couldn't get yeast. Everybody was buying flour. So it was incredibly busy. And it's now calming down a bit, but we're still doing home deliveries and not opening the shop because we're just trying to get food to people with low risk.
So people can locate you in Whitmuir. Where is Whitmuir located?
16 miles from John Lewis in Edinburgh.
There you are.
It's on the A701, exactly 16 miles from John Lewis's front door. Okay. So we're just up from West Linton, just down from Leadburn, just along from Pennycook.
Good. And then you open 7 days a week?
Well, we were open 7 days a week for the last sort of 15 years, but now there's a plant nursery here. They're open, and we've got an antique shop which is going to be open at the weekends, and we're doing home deliveries. So, and you're welcome to come and walk around the farm.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah. I think people should do that. I hope they will. I hope they do. Now, you were born in Dundee, a bit like our guest last week, Brian Cox.
Yes.
But your journey from Dundee to Whitmuir included India and Zambia. How did all that happen?
Well, the thing about Dundee, it was the centre of the Jute Empire. You know, I remember going to Verdant Works in Dundee and realising that, you know, the tents that were in the Korean War were from jute made in Dundee. All the ropes were from jute made in Dundee. Every settee was from jute from Dundee. So my dad was a jute mill manager. When I was 3 months old, I was 3 months premature, left in an incubator and shouldn't really have lived. My mum said it was the weight of a bag and a half of sugar. And the doctor said it'd be good to get this bairn to the heat. So at 3 months old, we went out to India and I had an ayah. So the first sort of 6 years of my life, I was out in India and Pakistan with an ayah. My mum said I was very, very prejudiced because I wouldn't play with any of the white kids on the boat coming back. My first language was Hindustani. I had shock white hair, but was very articulate in Hindustani and played with all the Indian and Pakistani kids.
You spoke Hindi?
Yeah, that was my first language. Yeah, I don't remember any of it now, but I loved my ayah.
I was about to ask you.
Yeah. So my mum said always used to, when we came back, there was a European side of the boat. This is a long time ago. This is the early 60s. And an Indian side of the boat. And I kept running around to the Indian side of the boat to find somebody with a sari because I liked the silk. Yeah. But lots of people in Dundee were out in India. And then in Zambia, my dad was invited to go out and open the first combined jute and hemp mill in Zambia. And that was a different contract because that wasn't a colonial Britain. Zambia was an independent country. And my dad went out as a guest worker. So very, very lucky to be in Zambia for 2 years. Loved the country, but I decided that I had to come back and go to school for secondary. So I got on the plane back from Zambia on my own. I can't believe this now, right? And my granddad said, I stayed with my gran and granddad a lot, but my granddad said he couldn't get over opening the door. And I was tipping the taxi driver at the age of 12 saying, Grandy, I'm back for the scale. It's just... And we didn't have mobile phones. You can't imagine that, can you? So my mum hadn't even sent a telegram saying the bairn's coming home, you know. But so we had the life of Riley, really.
Oh, really? You found your way from Zambia, presumably to London, and then on
Dhaka to Heathrow. I was an unaccompanied minor, and there were 2 other kids like me at the back of the plane. And then we changed at Heathrow, got to Edinburgh Airport, and I had to get a taxi to Waverley. And I vividly remember sort of going down that ramp at Waverley station, and this woman who obviously thought, why is this young child carrying bags, And she offered to help me, and I was very suspicious. But anyway, she got me to the ticket platform, and I got a ticket for a train to Dundee, and then I got a taxi, and then knocked on the door at Court Street, one floor up, saying, "Grandy, I'm back." And so I don't know how that happened, but that's how it happened back then.
So what was it like coming back to school in Dundee?
Well, I loved the school, and I wanted to go to the Morgan. I had a cousin who went to the Morgan Academy, so I should probably admit that we lied about where we lived. So I gave my gran and grandy's address as my home address so I could get to the Morgan. And I just loved the school. My mum said there was something wrong with me. So when she was saying, "You're not very well, take a day off," I would start greeting. No, I've got to get to the scale. So I had a great time. I ended up being the head girl at the Morgan. And
excellent.
Great memories of the school and the tune.
And then at some stage, you went to London.
Yeah, well, I left. I went to Edinburgh University, the early 80s, and I went there mainly because this is this great thing about teachers. There was a teacher called Mr. Forrest in the Morgan, and he stopped me in the corridor in sixth year and said, "Where's your UCA form?" which is what you had to fill in to go to university. Now, I was from Upper Multy in Dundee, working class background. It never crossed my mind that I would go to university. And my mum's dream was that I got a job in the office at the Timex doing the timesheets. That was the height of her aspirations. And Dr. Forrest said, "Where's your UCA form? You've got to go to university." And I said, "I've not even thought about it." And I had to get my mum to come in with me to meet Mr. Forrest. And he had to convince her that this was a sensible thing for me to do. So I ended up going to Edinburgh, thanks to that teacher who paid attention and noticed, And
isn't that amazing?
Yeah, we depend on teachers looking out for us.
Yeah. By the way, I should have asked you, how did you cope with all the storms last night?
And the cows went missing. So this morning, P went up the hill and we couldn't see the cows, but they're back. It's okay. They're not walking down the 701. The cows and the calves are back. Yeah. So I don't think they liked it much. It was pretty dramatic, but at least it didn't have the terrible consequences it's had up in Aberdeenshire today.
Oh, that's just dreadful. Hearts go out to the folks there. I mean, really dreadful. I gather 3 people have died there in that crash, which is just
terrifying.
Yeah, we should count our blessings. Though I have to say it was pretty bad here.
Very unusual lightning. Just kept going, but.
Well, it sort of reminded me of lightning, sort of weather you get overseas, frankly. It's more commonplace at this time of the year overseas. But to see it here, it's sort of almost like sheet lightning, which is very, very unusual. And torrential rain and the whole thing, just incredible.
You were asking how I got to London. So this was the early 80s. And it is that thing, people think nothing changes, but things do change. In the 80s, if you were female, you thought you were going to be a secretary. Yeah. And me and my pal Lizzie, we basically studied English, literature and language at Edinburgh University, had a great time, didn't think about a job at all. And then at the end of the period, we thought, God, we better get a job. So we went down to the Polytechnic in London to do secretarial and media studies. So we ended up in the East End of London. And I just sort of laughing about that because I was just remembering that one of the things we had to do was give a presentation to the students. Everybody had to take their turn. And me and Lizzie gave a presentation to these quite well off to learn how to be personal assistants. It's part of their finishing school thing. And we gave them a lecture on It's Scotland's Oil. We had the map. And we're saying, actually, these territorial waters belong to Scotland. And that was way back in the early 80s. And so just that thing about, we were interested in independence back then, but we didn't think of ourselves as Scottish nationalists. We just were making the case. They didn't agree with us, but we argued the case.
And you marched against Thatcher, I gather.
the whole of the 80s, I think I spent every Saturday on the street, So we had the Falklands War, we had Thatcher, we had the miners' strike, there was Greenham Common, the anti-nuclear marches. So every weekend was a demonstration of some sort, and a huge amount of involvement in politics. We ended up having a flat that, about, I don't know how many, we had 4 people living in it in Chelsea and Kensington. And I was in the Labour Party there. And way back in the early 80s. And I remember producing a report at the end of the year saying we have reduced the Conservative majority to 4 figures. 9,997 or something like that. But just that.
Jeremy Corbyn, is that right?
Oh, God, yeah. Well, one of the, he hasn't changed. So after being at Secretarial College, I then worked in a community centre in Islington. And I mean, we had the Brixton riots. There was a lot going on in London at that time, a huge amount of civil unrest. And Islington was Jeremy Corbyn's seat, as you know. So we knew him back then. And he still had those awful suits and looked crumpled at the same time. And at that point, he was pretty much as he was at the end. He was revered as the sort of guardian of the values. He had the word on what the line was, and was against the European Union back then. So I didn't know him well. I knew of him and had met him and went to meetings. And my favourite thing is a great Labour Party trick that if they were wanting to sort something out, they'd give you their own instructions about the meeting. So you went somewhere else. And then they had the meeting that made the decisions. So that was the early 80s, lots and lots of demonstrations and great things like Greenham Common. So that burgeoning of the women's movement, and all these guys kept saying, can't we come? And you think, can't you go and do something else? Like, we're doing this. This is our sort of campaign. You can support us, but you don't need to come. We're on our own.
Yeah.
And at Greenham, I learned that great tip for life, which is when you're in a really muddy, wet situation, always put carrier bags on your feet inside your boots and you'll be fine. So lots and lots and lots of political upheaval and campaigning.
And then you back to Scotland.
Yeah, well, I think it's that thing, isn't it? Like, I went to London because back then in the early 80s, everybody went to London. Scotland was a very different place. And if you wanted a job and a chance of getting a job, you left, So it was like the earlier exoduses, if you, no point in staying here, there's no work for you here. We had unemployment, so you went to London to work. And in London, we had this reputation. I was a jockess. People would always call you a jockess in London. And the Scots had this reputation for being incredibly hardworking and conscientious. So I ran the community centre through the 80s. That was the beginning of the Scottish, the Liberal Democrat lot. They all defected, left the Labour Party, started a new party. And unfortunately, that had a real impact on our community centre because we had to get funding. So, but I always wanted to come home. And so came back up to Edinburgh in the 80s.
We've had a question for you early on, early doors, as they say. We've had a question, and it's this: can Heather tell us what percentage of the membership of the NFUS is tenant farmers, and how much influence they have on the organisation?
I don't know the specific numbers. I would assume that a lot of tenant farmers, most farmers are tenant farmers. So it's that thing about realising that there's this impression that farmers are all loaded and wealthy and landowners, and you think, no, most farmers are tenant farmers, and they've been farming that ground for 100 years down through their family, and they're just trying to make a living, And certainly when we were involved in setting up farming for Yes, it was completely, I think we were all tenant. Well, we were owners because we had bought the farm at Whitmuir in 2000, but most people were tenant farmers. So and it's that thing of when you come into farming, it's such a shock that it's such a feudal system, to come from a multi in Dundee with the council and suddenly end up in this world of farming and realise that if you're a tenant farmer, you've got less rights than a basic council house tenant. So you spend all the time when you first come into this world going, are you kidding me? Are you joking? Is this how this works? This is ridiculous. People don't know that, So if you're a tenant farmer, you've got very few rights over your tenure. You have to maintain the property at your own cost. You have to fix everything when you leave. It's just ridiculous. Council house tenants have had rights for decades. They wouldn't put up with this nonsense.
Are you saying that people can be peremptorily thrown off the farm?
No, it's that thing about a lot of people are living in very poor quality housing.
Okay.
Right. And if they want to fix the windows or put in double glazing or insulation, they do all that at their own cost.
Yeah.
Right. So it's this it's like going back in time where you think, is this really how it works? And in terms of influence in the NFUS, I think they do try and listen. A lot of their members are tenant farmers, so obviously they've got a say. But it's a different culture. It's understanding how that culture works and how people have got to make a living, and they're not the price setters. They're very much the people who do what they have to do to sell their produce at the terms that the big guys, the supermarkets, say.
Yeah.
So they don't have a lot of autonomy on how they run their businesses.
And what effect do you think Brexit will have on that situation?
Catastrophic. I don't use that word lightly. We have a huge level of support from the European Union for farming in Scotland. It's a triple whammy, so the subsidy for farming is under threat. One of the things in the UK internal market proposal is this whole thing about anyone thinking there's unfair competition. So in England, DEFRA, the Department of Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs, is reducing all farming subsidy to zero over 7 years, right? And the Scottish Government have said they are going to protect farming subsidy for the next few years. So we're going to be in this situation where if we don't get our independence, we will be at the mercy of what DEFRA says is going to happen with subsidy. And you won't be, in my view, I don't see how you can justify, I know how you justify supporting less favoured area status and farmers in rural Scotland, but the UK government will not be willing to subsidise rural farming in the north of Scotland if they're not subsidising, farming in the south. So we lose the subsidy, we lose the frictionless access to a huge market for our produce. We lose the geographic indicators. So Scotch beef, Scotch whisky, Scotch lamb, Arbroath smokies, that all goes on the 1st of January. And most importantly, we lose the protection that our domestic market has. So at the moment, Europe protects farmers and standards. And because Europe is the biggest economic bloc in the world, it can tell everybody else to get lost.
Yeah.
On the 1st of January, we're in the cold, right? Yeah. We will not be able to protect our domestic markets because nobody is fighting our corner,
Well,
so it's really scary.
Yeah. And if there are farmers watching us and listening to us tonight, where should they go for help and assistance? I mean,
there's a lot of anxiety in farming because they're constantly told by the UK government that their main export market is England.
Yeah.
And they've got to buckle down and do what they're told. And there's a lot in that white paper about we're the biggest, England is the dominant partner and everybody has to do what they're told or they'll lose access to that market. And I think it's that thing about going through with farmers saying, and sorry, the SNP haven't ever been seen as a pro-farming party. They're sort of caricatured as an urban central belt party, which they aren't, because there's plenty of people in the SNP support, our farmers and support rural policies. So I think we have to be a safe haven for those people to say, please come and, who do you think is going to protect Scottish farmers? Do you think it's Boris Johnson or do you think it's us? Who do you think this land matters to? It's us. Who do you think should be in charge of what happens here? It's us. So it's getting them to put their faith in an SNP government to protect them and support their livelihoods. And all the goodwill is there. Fergus has done a great job in standing up for farmers, and it's just helping them take that next step. And I think Brexit will push a lot of them.
Don't you think they might be confused, though, Heather, because all of this is going to happen, as you say, on the 1st of January. It's very unlikely that Scotland will be independent by the 1st of January. So they're going to have to sort of suck this up, as it were.
Yeah.
And they're presumably going to say, well, how long do we have to do this for?
Yeah, well, I think there's been this unbelievable faith they've had that the Tories will look after them. Even though everything the Tories do demonstrates that they're not interested in looking after them. They didn't vote to support standards. They didn't vote for alignment. So I think it's a bit like the clans, isn't it? After the clearances, it takes people an awful long time to realise the folk they've invested their trust in aren't on their side. It's a very deep cultural thing. This is the tribe that they are comfortable with. So I think it's that thing about helping them place their faith in a different Scotland and a new farming. That's our job.
Let's go back to your story. I'd like to come back to that later on. Let's go back to your story. You've had this, you were raised on, as you say, Elvis and socialism.
Yeah.
So what was your journey from, I assume you're still look favourably upon Elvis, but what changed? Absolutely. It's like the king is always there. Yeah. So, but what changed about in your politics from being a Labour activist to all of a sudden you're in the SNP, supporting the SNP, an SNP councillor, and we'll come on to the MEP part later. But what caused that transition for you?
I think it was a long time coming. I never thought of the Labour Party as a unionist party. I don't think we ever discussed being in the union as part of our policies, and it was way back in the 80s, and I was in London, and that's what we were doing, and Tollcross Labour Party up in Edinburgh. And I think it's just that thing about that journey to yes, in the farming for yes, the whole thing about taking responsibility for yourself, not blame. I hate the politics of grievance, saying we're in this situation because somebody's been bad to us. Yeah. So the thing that really attracted me to the SNP in the last sort of decade has been that thing about saying we're responsible. If we make a mess, it's our mess, it's our decisions, we're accountable. And seeing lots and lots of people that I really admired in the SNP who were working phenomenally hard. Yeah. There was, when we came here in 2000, sort of 2005 to 2010, there was a lot of energy in the party around local food, supporting local producers, and we were part of that, so it was that thing about thinking these people take this seriously and they want to support us as producers. Yeah. And I had my boys. So in the lead up into the referendum, my two sons kept coming in and saying, Mum, read this. Mum, look at this. Mum, you've got to look at this. And so I think it was, I'd been voting. I voted for Alex Salmon. I'd voted SNP. And then I think you get to the point where you think, actually, I'm in this party and this party feels like family to me now.
Yeah. And you became a councillor.
Yeah. Well, I sort of got involved before the referendum through Farming for Yes. I was on the list back in, was it 2015 for the south of Scotland? When the council elections came up, I remember going along to the branch and saying, are you looking for somebody to be a councillor? So I got elected in 2017. I love being a councillor. You get, as I said just before the programme, hairdresser on the phone about grants for our business, party houses, you get everything as a councillor. We are in the opposition in Scottish Borders Council. We've got a fantastic SNP group, a brilliant group leader, Stuart Bell, who's been a tremendous mentor and support and is so sharp and shrewd and capable. I think it's that thing, and I got involved in. I'm now the convener of the Association of Nationalist Councillors. The ANC wasn't my African link; it was somebody else's. But so that's the body that represents all of the councillors in Scotland. So we try and organise events, and I've had to cancel 3 events this year: one on the COP and climate change, one on recruiting new councillors, and one on the budget because of COVID. But as a group, we're now getting organised. We're having Zoom meetings. We've got an AGM in September with Mike Russell and Kate Forbes. So it's just great to give. Councillors have played a phenomenally important role in this pandemic, because suddenly everything came back to the councils and everybody's worked flat out to support communities. And I think that's really helped the relationship between Holyrood and the councillors.
That's good. That's good. You ever see a time when you won't be the majority party in the council?
Yeah.
Really?
Just where they're all old. No, I think I stood as a councillor because I heard Susan Aitken saying we'd win independence by emptying the bins and fixing the roads. And I thought, oh, right, I better go and do that then, right? Yeah. And so I think our job in opposition as well as in administration is to be competent, to be hardworking, to deliver for people. And in a sense, we're just normalising being pro-independence. It's not that there are people over there, it's just these are ordinary people who support independence. It's completely normal to support independence.
Yeah. It seems to me that's an important move, because essentially, we've discussed on this programme before, independence movements tend to confront a 3-part alignment, as it were. There's those who are always in favour and will always be in favour. There's the folks in the middle, they constitute also about a third. And then there's the folks who will be opposed, regardless of what happens. They just don't like constitutional change. They just abhor the whole business. So eventually what happens is that the people in the middle determine the outcome. It's persuading people in the middle to move towards, in Scotland, it would be the yes camp. Many hundreds of years ago in the American environment, it would have been the Patriots. And once that group moves, that clinches the decision, as it were. However the decision is contrived, that's generally what happens, that group in the middle. And as you said, they have to be persuaded. And they're persuaded on a whole range of different matters. And some are persuaded on the fact that their bins get emptied on time. Yeah,
that's right. Do the job. Yeah, do the day job.
Do the job. Because if you do it,
one of the councillors
do it elsewhere.
Yeah. One of the councillors on Scottish Borders Council, who I won't name, sat with me. We do an alternative budget every year. And one of the councillors sat with me at the end and he said, how does someone like you end up in the SNP? Just that thing about saying, because I think we should be responsible for our own future and our own affairs. And he said, I've never heard it put like that. You think, well, think about it, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, in fairness, I thought maybe this is what you're going to mention when you talked about eventually attaining control of the Border Council. Was that there must be lots of what are known informally as soft Tories who are concerned about things like waste and all of that good stuff, which is a traditional Tory issue, as it were. And they must be increasingly looking at all the waste that's going on and saying to themselves, this is not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for all this nonsense.
Brexit is phenomenal, right? So it's had a huge impact. So we haven't had agricultural shows this year, but last year at the People's Agriculture Show, I was gobsmacked at the number of people who came up and said, well, if I have to choose between one union and another union, I'm choosing the European Union. So that is a seismic shift of people looking up and saying, what future world do I want to live in? Do I want to live in this insular, inward-looking, backward-looking country, or do I want to be part of the real world, and look out?
And it takes us very neatly onto being an MEP.
Oh, yeah.
Because there you were in the outside world, as it were.
Yeah.
So what was your experience? How did it come about? How do you feel about it? And what do you think people overseas think about the Scotland you represented?
Well, it came about because Alan Smith got elected to Westminster. And in the lead up to that election, Boris Johnson was basically threatening a no-deal Brexit any day soon, right? But when he won, he basically said we would leave the European Union on the 31st of January, right? Yeah. So not next Tuesday, but the 31st of January. And I phoned up Mike Russell and said, we've got a seat, there's a democratic deficit here. We should be in that seat, because the minute Alan stands down, I'm the next person on the list. And so I have the Guinness Book of Records, I think, for being the shortest legal member of the European Parliament. I was there for 3 days legally, but not being one to ask permission. I just got on a Ryan jet plane in January and went out and was part of was in the Parliament for 3 weeks, but not actually able to vote until, I was determined we would have that vote to register our dissent against the withdrawal bill. And that was the real focus. And the other reason for going was to make a scene, so basically make sure that we were clearly identified as having a different position at that point, and that whole thing about being dragged out against our will without our consent. So I really wanted to be there to make sure that we could make that statement to the rest of the world and be seen to make that statement to the rest of the world. Michael Gove had promised that he would approve my appointment, because it's a UK appointment, remember? And it was 3 weeks of questions in Parliament, pressure, Jacob Rees, smog, saying, I have no idea why anyone would want to go to the European Parliament and all this stuff. So they held on and didn't give consent. And then I think Michael Gove basically thought, God, she'll be much worse being outside the chamber when they're taking the vote than being inside the chamber. So they actually approved it on the Monday night at 10 o'clock before the vote on the Wednesday. So there was an email came through, and our MPs, our SNP MPs were just fantastic, fought the corner. Yeah. But going to Europe makes me cry. So Europe, we are seen as a real country. We're seen as a real nation of grown-up people with something to contribute to the rest of the world. We're respectful of the agenda that Europe's pursuing. We're at the front. So in terms of combating climate change, renewables, the circular economy, all the work we were doing before on food and local production, we've now got farm to fork in Europe. We were seen as leaders, Yeah. So it's that thing about, I so wish people in Scotland could see how highly we're regarded. There is such warmth towards Scotland, yeah. And people know who we are and know what we represent and want to welcome us back. And the European Union is in a very difficult situation because the UK government is the member state, yeah. And the European Union will always defend and protect the member states. But they're not a member state on 1 minute past midnight on the 1st of January. And that's when we start being an accession state, right?
Oh, so, is that, and how would that work then? I mean,
we have to get our independence.
Of course. Yes. What do you think might change in the EU side come the 1st of January?
The UK aren't a member state anymore.
I understand that, but what effect would you think that will have on the EU's relationship with Scotland?
I would hope that it could be more transparent and open. Mm-hmm. But we have to get our independence. We have to do the day job and secure our nationhood. You can't be an accession nation if you're not a nation.
Sure.
And so a big part of this journey is making sure that our journey towards independence is internationally validated and recognised, and we're seen to have a case. And I think the big thing that happened was back in 2014, they didn't really get it, but they get it now. Yeah. So people like Philip Lambert, the leader of the Greens, says Brexit is about English nationalism. Yeah. There's a shift in their understanding of our position.
Okay. But you don't expect anything particularly provocative to come out of the EU.
No, they wouldn't do anything provocative. But I think it's that thing about it's for us to do the work to get our independence and take our place in the world.
Yeah, I mean, but I think some people might see this as a sort of maybe a mutually advantageous, might be one way to put it, of the EU being able to cock a snook at what's left of the UK, as it were, by encouraging either discreetly or overtly any move towards independence in Scotland. Do you think that might be the case?
I couldn't possibly comment.
Of course not. Of course not.
But I know that they know who we are. I know that they welcome our contribution. I know that they know we want to be there, and I know that they now know that we were taken out against our will. And Scotland has the right to self-determination, just like any country.
Yeah.
And that universal right being recognised is important.
Do you have any views on the court case that's presently going through the Scottish courts? The Forwarders One group, they're mounting a legal challenge based on the fact that both parliaments, the Scottish and Westminster Parliament, have both approved the claim of right. So therefore, the court case is predicated upon that both parliaments have approved it, and therefore the Scottish Parliament ought to have the power to go ahead with the referendum. Have you followed this case?
I'm aware it's going on, but I think it's that thing about the case for a referendum is a public case, and so you could do the legal stuff. That's really important as a backup, but we're not going to win independence because we've won a legal case. So I think where we are now is the case. If May is the test, the election for Holyrood in May, having a huge mandate, having the authority, and then our right to contest our right to be independent is undeniable, right? It's just not acceptable. Johnson can't stop it, and the idea that the way you can stop a country becoming a national state is by saying we're not letting you have a vote is nonsense. It just falls apart as a mythology. And the way they're behaving just now shows how much they're taking that seriously. And I wish people in Scotland would realise they're much more worried about us getting our independence.
Yeah.
We're still some people are in the mode of still asking permission.
Yeah.
And we'll not get to do it because we'll not get permission. And I think we're beyond that. The rest of the world's looking on. So if we win the mandate, to deny us an independence referendum would be internationally unacceptable.
It does sound a wee bit contradictory, though, Heather, because you say we shouldn't have to ask, but we are actually doing it in the business of asking. We're in the business of saying, please, may we have a Section 30?
Yeah.
That's exactly
that's our constitutional arrangement. Yeah. And as Kenyon Wright would say, we're at the end of this road, aren't we? Like the constitutional arrangement and the devolution settlement are under attack. The things that we thought were safe about our powers and the Sewell Convention and our right to give consent are being dismantled as we speak. So we're at the end of this part of the story.
Good point. I want to come back to this shortly, but I'd like to take a couple of questions, if I may. And here we are. Farmer for Fife is asking, this is the first time I've heard of Farmers for Yes. Can we get them more visible, please?
We did meet, was it last year or the year before, saying, well, we get the band back together, but we didn't reconvene. So we're not constituted as a group at the moment. It was very much about 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fairness to Farmer from Fife, I misread his comment. That comment came from Indy Yes 2014. The first time we'd heard of it. Of course, Farmer from Fife had heard about it before, but he was more interested in the point of re-establishing the Farmer for Yes group. I take it.
Well, sort it out.
There you are, Farmer for Fife.
Send out an email. Right, that's it. Right. Yeah.
Oh, here's a rather self-serving one from our producer, Kevin. He's saying, do you think, Heather, you would be interested in doing Zoom live shows for Farmers for Yes to spread the word?
yes, I'm interested in doing anything. There are great people in that group, like Jim Fairley was one of the leading people as well, who you'll know. So if there are, we can do things differently now, can't we, because of this digital technology. So, and I think it's just, we do all these things on top of everything else we're doing, so it's having the time to do it. But I think it is an issue that has to be addressed. So, yeah, I'd get Jim in though as well.
Yeah. Well, if Jim's interested, all he has to do, or anyone's interested in Farmers for Yes, just need to contact Independence Live, and they'd be happy to talk about how that might be possible. And it would allow Farmers for Yes to talk to, a broad spectrum of people.
Yeah.
It's clearly there's an appetite for knowing more about what you do and what the farming community is about. I mean, we only scratched the surface tonight, I have to tell you. There's a bunch of questions we could have got into. Somebody's asking, do you think there's a possibility that the accession that you talked of, i.e. Scotland's accession into the EU, could be fast-tracked?
I think our accession into the EU will be faster than most countries because we comply. We're a member state. We've got all the legislation. The Scottish Parliament is a rights-based organisation with the UN Convention of Human Rights. So we're not starting from a long way back. And part of what we have to do is try and, the continuity bill that's going through Parliament at the moment is about saying we want to keep pace with European regulation. We do not want to have everything dismantled. It's going to be a fight. But I think we're a member state now, so it's not as difficult for us as other countries. We comply. Yeah. I'm sure they're not going to fast track anybody. It doesn't work like that, but we don't have as much to do to get in.
Well, if a country doesn't have as much to do, that rather suggests...
That's not them fast tracking us.
Oh, I see. Okay. I think I understand. Yeah. Okay, so what's your feeling about your future? We'll come on to how you feel about Scotland's future, but let's talk a little bit about your future. I mean, you're very busy. You're running an organic farm. You're a very senior councillor. I mean, all the other things that you've got on just now. But would you be interested in running for, say, a position in the Scottish Parliament? Would that be of interest to you at some stage?
Absolutely. I was on the list in 2015. I think there's so many things I'm passionate about that I want to get on and do. So I think the thing about land use in Scotland, 42% of our land in Scotland is given over to deer mismanagement. So we've got to build this country and use the assets of this country. We've got to support our food and farming structures. We've got to, I'm passionate about the right to food and making sure that we don't have food banks in Scotland and that kids are never at risk of depending on charity to get their tea. That's just an abomination. Yeah, so we've got so much to do about building a fair and equitable country. We've made such a phenomenal start. So I think that thing about building the country that we want to live in is something I'm passionate about, and I'll contribute whatever way I can, whether that's a councillor or in Holyrood, in Europe. I'll do whatever I can. You're not going to shut me up if I don't.
That's an astonishing percentage of giving over to deer management.
I know. It's mental, right? And we don't even eat the venison. We used to export it to Germany. So it's that whole thing about we're giving, kids turkey Twizzlers and we've got venison, right? So it's that thing about what is this land for? How do we best use this land for the benefit of our economy, our people? We've been, Leslie Riddick always says that thing about we have to behave as if we own the place. One of the things that we did with the schools, we ran this course called Growing Global Food Citizens on the Farm. And if you're a global food citizen, you know about the history of food in your country. You know how food affects you, how it affects the planet, how to grow food, how to cook food. Yeah. And so on this session about the history of food, I graphicked, it's one of the things I used to do, I graphicked the history of food in Scotland. Yeah. And it is this overwhelmingly tragic story. You've got feudalism comes in and it stays there all the way along the line to the present time. Yeah. And we have exported our produce to other countries instead of thinking about how we feed ourselves. So we just got so much work to do in redesigning things.
It's definitely going to be interesting. We've got loads of questions coming in about independence. Heather, what do you think the time span is until we get independence? What's the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, until we are actually independent? How long is this going to take?
Well, May is critically important. A lot will happen next year. 1 to 2 years, would be what I would be hoping for. If it's longer than that, doesn't matter. We just keep going. It's taken, I think people forget how different it was in 2014, right? So in 2014, we didn't have this general consciousness of Scotland as a nation, and we talk about Scotland as a nation, a government all the time now. It's just part of common discourse. And it wasn't back in 2012, 2013. And, we all talk about the First Minister. We know we've got a different legislation. With the vote last year, people finally voted the Scottish government as the most important government. So there's been this huge journey about seeing ourselves as a nation and not questioning that. So, and the polls are showing that most people think this is now normal. It's not why would we be independent? It's why wouldn't we be independent, which is a very different argument.
Yeah.
So we're on the road. Don't blow it.
Here, if I may. Let's assume your scenario, 1 year, 2 year, is pretty accurate. It does mean then that would be 2 years outside the EU, with all the consequences that you mentioned earlier, which sound extremely serious.
Mm-hmm.
And we could still have a situation where the Prime Minister of the UK, whoever that is at that time, because personally I don't expect it to be Boris Johnson, but it could well be Michael Gove, who is steadfast in refusing and saying, well, I don't care. And furthermore, in that 2 year period, it's entirely feasible that the Westminster government will pass a new Act of Union that says that the territorial integrity of the UK is sacrosanct.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, to secede would be treasonable, as it is, for example, Spain right now. So there is a danger in a 2 year scenario, or even a 1 year scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I think that I'm not saying I don't want it for 2 years. I'll take it on the 1st of January if we can get it. I think we're in the end game here, and things can perhaps move very quickly. When things fall apart, they fall apart not on a set out timetable. The whole thing about them opening that new office, the whole thing about the Union Jack, the whole thing about Scotland, the brand not mattering, they are now, we're not being love bombed anymore. This is the end game, and it's for the people of Scotland to say we're not taking this anymore.
What's the opposite of a love bomb? Is that hate?
It's Union Jack on a box of strawberries.
Can you tell me what's the opposite of a love bomb? Because that's certainly how it feels right now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you know these folks. I'm going to ask you, but a number of your fans, maybe they're just recent fans, I don't know. Ruth Poole has written in. Do you know Ruth?
I don't know.
Oh, Ruth Poole says, great interview. Heather is so knowledgeable about food production in Scotland. John Peyton Day says, superb interview, Heather.
Thank you. John Peyton Day is going to be our candidate, but we're waiting on him getting approved for a by-election. Yeah.
And Ian Johnson says, no rest until yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the whole thing about when we spoke before, I remember I got the chance to interview Canon Kenyon Wright, the Constitutional Convention.
Yeah.
And he, I was interviewing him about leadership. And he kept saying, while there's chaos and madness going on, you have to keep focused on the direction, and you have to bring everybody in at every point and keep them on the task. Yeah. And this is a hard time for the SNP, because we just need to say this, all the way through the 2014 referendum, we kept saying keep the head, and that's where we are now. Yeah. We're not under attack from the Tories in Scotland. We're not under attack from the Liberal Democrats. The Greens are with us. We have to just focus on getting that mandate that is undeniable and getting recognition for it and finishing the job.
So your feeling is that, hey, it's going to happen. It's going to happen sometime soon.
Yeah, it's going to happen sometime soon.
I mean, this is going to result in an additional burden for you. Let's assume that you're part of the SNP group at Holyrood. I do hope that happens, by the way. That's a personal opinion. You've still got Whitmuir on your plate. Well, you've still got the family. Well, you stay as a councillor. I mean, it just sounds like an incredible number of responsibilities. How would you cope with all of that?
Oh, I'd love it. If you want a job done, ask a busy person. Well, the farm, the farm shop, we had Lena who was running the farm shop up until COVID hit. We had this sort of disaster of the farm shop manager left to have a baby just at lockdown. But she will come back. The baby's great. And we appointed a new shop manager last week. So all that business stuff runs itself. I just got hauled in when Lena left and we had a pandemic and a global, a local food crisis. So there is time to do that. Yes, you'd stand down as a councillor. You wouldn't have dual mandate as a councillor and an MSP. That's normal. But the passion and energy you would get from doing that job, that we're in the early days of a new nation. And that gives you phenomenal energy because you're working on something you believe in. And it's that interesting thing in the Scottish borders. We're a fantastic group. We're all driven. We're all wanting to do stuff. And the thing that is debilitating is having an administration of folk who aren't really bothered about doing anything. And we have a cause. We have a focus. That's why we get up and do what we do. Yeah, having a cause gives you energy.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And you've certainly demonstrated that tonight. No question about that. So if you were thinking about the audience tonight, what last message would you want to give to the folks who are watching and listening?
I think believing in ourselves, taking ourselves seriously, standing up, tall and saying we're nearly there. This has been a long journey. The fact that the UK government are bringing out a white paper celebrating how good Falkirk and Crieff were in 1720 shows you how panicked they are, right? So understand that they're taking us seriously. We have to keep taking ourselves seriously. We need to build the picture of what this independent nation is going to be and get there, and next year is our year. We will get there.
Now, one quick question, because it'd be remiss of me not to put it to you. You're on the NEC.
Yes.
There's been a lot of very negative stuff around about the NEC recently.
I should get an award for being one of the few people who haven't spoken to the press.
Well, you have your chance now. It's not quite but you have your chance now.
Yeah. We've had a few very, very tough and difficult meetings, long meetings. It is it's a huge group of people. It's been, conducted on a computer screen. So we're all very, very, very conscious and trying to do the right thing and do a good job. And I think it's, I don't think anybody is on there to damage anything or wreck it. And we will keep the conversation going. We hear what everybody's saying. It's not a pleasant time to be on the NEC. If you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen. But I think we're all very conscious of what's being said and taking it seriously and trying to address it. We're not taking any of it lightly.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to have a governing body as a widespread membership. But as somebody looking at it from the outside, it seems to have a lot of people on it.
It's 40 odd people. And we only met twice in person.
Is it really necessary to have 40 people to get?
Yeah, it's bigger than our council. Yeah. So and we haven't formed as a group, because we only met twice in person. So I think all that is making it really difficult to have robust conversations because you're looking at a screen and trying to work out who's saying what and all the rest. So I probably divulged too much information there. Yeah.
Oh, it's too late now. It's too late. Anyway, another
doing their best and working hard.
Yeah, this has become a little bit like the Heather Anderson fanzine here. Mandy McMillan says, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. You have such great energy, Heather.
Thank you. I know. That's because I'm doing what I believe in, and you saw that in 2014, didn't you? You saw that people bursting with energy, bursting with hope, bursting with ideas, wanting to build a country. And we've got to plug that, back in and say, what could be more exciting than building the country you want to live in, that you're proud to be in? How could we not be energetic?
Exactly.
It's a fantastic time to be Scottish.
And taking up that very point, it must be hugely disconcerting for the Tories and the Border Council to be confronted by people like you, when all they want is a quiet life.
We have these briefings. We have these briefings, and the convener basically tries to, he's doing his best, and he'll say, well, we'll get questions at the end of this section, and then I sort of have to go and say, I'm sorry, I've got 8 questions.
You need to keep it up. You need to keep it up.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. We've almost come to an end now. And I have to say a big thank you to you, Heather.
I loved it. Thank you.
Hugely entertaining. And maybe at some stage you might consider coming back and talking to us again. And a big thanks to all of you out there watching and listening to the show. And we hope you've enjoyed it. We have a formidable list of guests lined up for future shows. Next week, we have the famous grouse beater who's joining us. Gareth will be talking about his life and Scotland's future. Think about this. His Twitter site alone has over 50,000 readers, 50,000 readers a month. So join us next Wednesday at 7 p.m. For the Nation Talks to the grouse beater. And oh yes, look out for my Constitution column, please, on Sunday in the Sunday National. I'll be writing about how pandemics shape countries. And very importantly, please support India Live and India Live Radio. New voices for a new Scotland. And for all the news you're not getting from elsewhere, think about all the stuff that Heather's covered tonight. You wouldn't have found anywhere else, frankly. And if you like the TNT show, contribute to India Live. Thanks again and good night. And join us next Wednesday. And remember, it's a great day for British democracy. Good night, all.